What's happening, people? Back with another Pet Shop Boys reaction, and those of you who've been closely following this deep dive might be a bit confused. And yes, I am jumping ahead in time, but the reason for that is, number one, an exception, and we will go back for the remainder of the expanded folder for Very. Thank you again to Seb. But yes, my friend Kim has sent me a suite of tunes related to a handful of themes that are relevant both in the short term and certainly on a longer arc, and I've been trying to get through them over the course of a week. It may extend into the beginning of next week, but ultimately one of the tunes was a Pet Shop Boys tune, and indeed, Kim has commented on a number of Pet Shop Boys reactions previously, and she sent me a tune from 2006, and it's called Integral. So, as I mentioned, the suite of songs Kim sent, she put under different headings, and there was like a sequence of headings that was like Disillusionment, Losing Hope, and Are You Giving Up Yet? And this track, Integral, or Integral if you prefer, was listed under the Giving Up Yet? Subheading. And her note for this one was very short, and she just referred to a line. I'm going to make sure I'm getting this correctly. But the line was, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear. And, she made a joke that like, whoa, now I'm really worried. So yeah, I do wonder whether this relates to those who, acknowledge moral ambiguity or the complexity of human affairs and perhaps are inclined to see that as an inescapable dynamic, a sort of quagmire of human imperfection, and the idea that we all, have this idea that, we'd like to be, or it's held up as a standard at least, that, people should behave in this way, and, they should have this type of thinking and this type of attitude, but in practice it's rarely so simple, and it's often, difficult, if not impossible, to adhere to, a behavioral program that doesn't allow for the imperfections and difficulties that humans manifest both individually and especially when they come together in larger cultures and societies and movements and so on. So that might have nothing to do with the song, but given that this was put under the heading Giving Up Yet, and given the short nature of the note I got, that's what my brain thinks of when I see the word integral, where, something like its form, its substance, its composition, and, the idea of it being whole and discrete and intact, and, as we humans, that isn't always or often is not the case. So yes, ultimately, I'm curious to hear what will be at play. Let's give it a listen. This is Pet Shop Boys. The track is Integral, or maybe Integral, and it's from 2006.
If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear. If you've something to hide, you shouldn't even be here.
The bass line.
Long live us, the persuaded we, integral. To the whole project, it's brand new, conceived solely to protect you. One world, one reason, unchanging, one season. If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear. If you've something to hide, you shouldn't even be here. You've had your chance, now we've got the mandate. If you changed your mind, I'm afraid it's too late. Reconciled, you're a threat. You're orchestral to the project. Sterile, immaculate, rational, perfect. Everyone has their own number in the system that we operate under. We're moving to a situation where your lives exist as information. One world, one life, one chance, one reason, all under one sky, unchanging, one season. If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear. If you're something fresh. You're on Instagram to the project. Immaculate, rational, perfect.
That song was fucking perfect. Holy crap. Like, so that's what lies ahead in the Pet Shop Boys journey. Unbelievable. I'll admit, like, I caught tidbits of lines. Certainly the chorus, I heard pretty clearly. But I was so amazed and overwhelmed by the sonics, the dynamic electric synth bass, the little string flourishes, the melodic grandeur of it, the dynamic evolving chronology of the tune. Like, that was just brilliant. Like, sonically, I'm stunned. I suppose I shouldn't be. I mean, I've already heard the way they mix, like electronic dance floor type sounds with synth pop melodies and clever lyrics and so on. But that's incredible. That's brilliant, and I can't wait to get to the mid 2000s era. Though again, I think we have a lot to go through between now and then. And at some point, I'm going to go to the special version of their more recent album that I bought in physical form. But damn, like, that was just stunning from a sonic point of view. Lyrically, I think maybe there was something to some of the ideas I had in advance. And like, again, just the chorus, the idea of like, if you've done nothing wrong, then you got nothing to worry about. But the reality is, pretty much everybody, like indeed everybody on a long enough timeline will have made choices or statements or actions that can be judged on an ethical level and that might have been imperfect, if not outright problematic. People have done things based on emotional passions that from a more logical point of view they might not have done. So basically that first pair of lines seems to apply to like nobody in practice, and then if you've got something to hide, you shouldn't even be here, maybe speaks to that idea that there's these ideals and this like mores that are held up as like standards, but that are ultimately, they make us feel like we can't live up to them, and so they lead to emotional confliction or feelings of self-doubt and maybe seeing other people behave in a way that is not on the level. And so the idea of like, what are we even doing as a society? Like, is this something where like it's just a joke? And then, what was it, like something if you change your mind, well then it's already too late. So it sounds like, we get one life, we get one shot at all this, and, we're still trying to figure things out, and we have to make decisions that have consequences for ourselves and others, and, we're sort of banging our head along the walls of life and society, and then it's like, well, there's just one season, that like, you don't get to start again, or like, oh, season 2, where they've learned, and, now they get to behave in a more, understanding way and so on. So it feels like maybe there is something to some of the ideas that I had in advance. But again, I didn't catch all the lines, and I think there's more to it here. So I'm going to look forward to hearing people's comments and ultimately, in the context of the suite of songs I've been going through, it feels like this might relate to persistence or the inability to, feel that, the idea that over time we become disillusioned, we lose hope, and we ultimately, get sort of focused on ourselves, and maybe by that very token become more selfish, or more immoral toward others, or to the idea of this, like, collective good and so on. Though again, maybe that is understandable in light of these national powerful forces, international forces that are often exploitative, greedy, and otherwise unfeeling, and it makes it hard to tap into the better parts of our nature individually and collectively. But bottom line, sonically, absolutely brilliant. Take a bow, Neil and Chris. I can't believe it. So yes, we'll, as I said, jump back to the expanded folder for Very, and I open that just to get a sense for where we're at. And by the way, shout out to all of you who commented on the absolutely fabulous show. There's a number of you who commented, in the comments, and Yvonne was talking to me about it, and others, have pointed out that, the characters and so on, and the flavor of the show was well represented in the samples and the tune itself. So I was on the outside looking in there. I'd never actually heard of it, so yeah, that was interesting. Like, shout out to Joseph. I remember he was commenting about that. So yeah, ultimately I appreciated the insight there, and at some point maybe I'll have more of the wherewithal to like get what that song was doing. Though again, I did enjoy the cheekiness of it just in the moment. Nevertheless, when we come back for the next Pet Shop Boys reaction, it will be If Love Were All. So, that feels like it's part of a larger phrase or sentence, and there's a, maybe a conditional, like an if-then statement, like if love were all, then such and such might be the case, or you might be able to do this. But that already sounds like it's a counterfactual, a hypothetical that goes against what is actually the case. So I'll think more about it when we get there, but I'm looking forward to all the Pet Shop Boys we have coming, which I hope is much, much more. And again, at some point, I think in the maybe not too distant future, we're going to listen to a song that I've known for a while, initially through a hard trance / hard house remix. Shout out to Seb, who did seek that out on my channel in the early days. But yeah, Single Bilingual. It's a tune I know from them initially through a remix, though I would actually, eventually hear the regular version too. And I'm looking forward to that, but beyond that, or maybe one or two others, I don't know anything that's coming, and if this is an indication what's ahead, good lord, I'm looking forward to it. So, in any case, let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Peace.